Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of the West Haymarket JPA for Thursday, September 24th, 2020 to order. First item is introductions, and to my left is Council Member Tammy Ward, and to my right is Regent Tim Clare from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I'm Mayor Lyrian Gaylor-Baird. This is a public meeting subject to the State Open Meetings Act, a copy of which is located in the back of the chamber. And the clerk will read each item on the agenda, and staff will then come forward to present on that item. Each speaker may state their name and address for the record, and testimony is limited to 5 minutes on each item. And with that, Casey, please call the first item.
Item number 3, approval of the minutes from the JPA meeting held July 23rd, 2020.
Move approval.
A second.
Approval moved by Claire, seconded by Ward. Any discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Gaylor-Baird,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Next item is item number 4, approval of July and August 2020 payment registers and review of the July and August 2020 expenditure reports.
I would move approval.
Do we want to have
So
Brandon come
first.
forward first? Thank
That
you.
might be
Okay,
okay.
sorry, I wasn't looking.
Brandon
that
Kaufman,
is-
treasurer for the JPA. So in your packets, you have the July register. I'll go over some highlights on that one, then I'll hit the August register. So for July register, we had parking deck management, about $52,518. There's the operating increment, additional transfer of $600,000. That was approved by the board. DEC payments of $216,918, of which JPA pays about 31%, and then the 69% is billed back to the customers. We had some arena maintenance charges for various items that occurred over there of $18,178, a $1,900 charge that finished the server migration project that the board earlier approved, and $7,405 for some various other maintenance items. And then also we had the June parking deck management payment on that register for $101,983.05. On the August register, which is also in that same tab on your packet, next page, we had the fourth quarter city staff distribution of $100,377.75. We had the final payment on the LED lighting project of $532,292. That completes the LED upgrade in the Arena Bowl. July parking deck management of $80,291. We had DEC payment of $223,232. Same thing, 69% of that's billed back to the customers. And we had some arena maintenance projects, $14,955. That's just for various repairs and maintenance made on a monthly basis. Server install license of $646. And that covers the payment registers. I'm going to pause there, see if anybody has any questions about items.
Go ahead.
In the August payment register where you have the first charge to the City of Lincoln Accounting Department, what is that for?
So that's for the staff, that's the fourth quarter payment for the prior fiscal year of all the staff time that's allocated to the JPA.
Okay, this is sounding like a repeating record. I've asked for this for over a year.
Okay.
To keep track of time, and if you've got that, I'd like to see it, and I want to make sure, just from a fiduciary standpoint, the city and the JPA, I think, have a fiduciary responsibility both ways, and if we're not paying, if the city staff is performing more than what we're compensating for, then we need to pay for that.
Okay.
Similarly, if we're getting charged for more than what we're actually doing or getting done for us, then we need to be,
I have a calculation sheet I can share with you. see the review. So that sheet calculates based off of all the staff, not only salaries, but also total benefits. And then we take the percent of their time that's allocated, and whether that's for my time, time in the treasurer's office, attorney's staff time, so all the various purchasing, all the various things that the JPA utilizes from the city.
Okay. Well, I don't have time to look at this right now for the meeting, but I'd like to kind of study this and then get back to you with further
Okay.
questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Could you explain the variability in the parking deck management costs from month to month? We see 52,000, 101,000, 82,000. Would you just help us understand that variability?
So I think the primary variability in the parking deck management is based off of how many people are actually utilizing the garage, is how they're going to staff to it. So I think those costs have obviously decreased as the parking utilization has decreased on the 3 JPA garages. So those have actually went down over time. But depending also if they have events over there, they'll staff up for those. So that's what brings some of the variability into the parking deck management.
Thank you. All right. And just to circle the, close the loop on Regent Claire's concern, that information that you prepared, can that be part of future packets whenever we're looking at that
Yes.
information?
Yeah.
In
we can-
advance?
we can put that in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are all typically developed during the budget time for the city, because typically we go through biennial, but we went through the annual. So those costs were calculated based off of a biennial before we shifted to the annual. So right now, I think they went up about 0.5% for the upcoming year. So I was going to talk about that during the budget time. So.
Okay. Should we move on to expenditure reports?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition, if there are any more questions on that?
Warren?
Okay. All of those items from the register included in the expenditure reports. Under a tab in your packet, you also have the West Haymarket Fund Statement of Revenues, Expenditures, and Changes in Fund Balance. So I just want to highlight, I can probably go to the August 31st because that gives our year-end preliminary results. We're still making some adjustments as we get prepared for the audit process. But you can see revenues of 30.7 million, expenditures of 34.6 for a deficit of about 3.9 million. So our beginning fund balance of 44.6 million ended up at about 40.7 million for the end of the JPA's fiscal year, which is August 31st. In addition, you also have under your tab, there's PBA income statement. The latest that's included in this packet currently, there should be 2 in there. The latest one was as of July 31st, 2020. So revenues of about 3.2 million, expenditures of 4.7 for about a deficit of about 1.5 million. So it looks in your packet as a retained balance of negative 656,000. They still have cash balances, so that doesn't mean that they're negative with these financial statements.
Any other questions for Brandon? Okay. Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to these items? We'll take public comment on these items.
Will you do all of this payment and the budget too?
What's that?
Have you-
No, I'm not speaking on the budget yet. That'll be coming up.
Next. So Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. You know, I can't hear a thing if you don't use the mic and you have the mask on. So, what is the plan for cutting some of these expenses over the next, that you've had, like in the last few months?
I think
The big expenses.
the JPA has, I mean, if you look at the operating reports, we came in significantly under budget on the expenditure side, but also, you know, we came in under budget on the revenue side, given everything that's going on with COVID-19. In addition to, you know, coming under budget from delaying any type of CIP projects, Tom's done multiple things at the arena to cut cost over at Pinnacle Bank Arena as well. He's willing, I'm sure he'll be willing to speak on those if needed as well, so.
Okay, what about the, and maybe that's more his than yours, but you're getting some revenue from these boxes, quite a bit of boxes, and these people are just paying for them whether they have events there or not?
So from the revenue perspective for the premium seat rentals on the suites and the loges, at this point, we've delayed the billings for the current year and looking to come back to the board at some point to have that discussion. But so they have not paid for this current fiscal year that we're in right now.
Okay. And that's going to be discussed then?
I think we're likely, right now they've been delayed. I think the suites to have a discussion sometime October, and the club seats looking more of like a January type timeframe. So.
What about these tickets that have been paid for, events that have been delayed? Is that cash being held someplace, or it didn't sound like in the paper they had refunded these people?
Tom Lorenz, General Manager at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Whenever we sell a ticket, those tickets are held in a separate account, a ticket account, and just for the exact purpose of if an event doesn't occur, that way they're there for refunds. And so as artists have either postponed, rescheduled, or canceled, we've dealt with those situations individually. So if a concert decided to reschedule from, let's say, now to about a year out, people have a 30-day window with which they can ask for a refund. If they ask for a refund through Ticketmaster, Ticketmaster asks us for the money. We then wire the money to Ticketmaster, and it's given back to the customer. So that money is held aside. Even if all of the concerts that we had upcoming canceled, and they haven't, we would have all the funds to be able to refund all those dollars.
Okay, they're in escrow, is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, where are they held in escrow?
It's held in one of the accounts. There is a ticketing account. We operate as Pinnacle Bank Arena, City of Lincoln, and there is a separate checking account where all of those are held.
Okay, here locally, or where SMG is?
No,
Or
it's held
it's not
locally, yeah.
SMG anymore, it's
Right.
global?
Right. It's held locally here.
What?
It's held locally.
Okay. And so you're earning interest on that, or it's just,
There is a thing called repo, that when you put things in, and for a while, repo was paying pretty good. It's not paying as much because of the fund and bond rates is less. But yes, as those funds are held, they do at least earn some interest.
okay, so people have to request a refund?
Unless, now, if a concert is canceled, Ticketmaster has the list of all those people who purchased those tickets, and when they purchase them with a credit card, if a cancellation happens, an automatic refund is pushed out. If they purchase their ticket at the box office through cash, they have hard tickets, and then it's up to them to come back into the box office and ask for a refund, and we have the funds to do that.
Okay, so they could be held for 2 years then?
That can happen. It's a very, when that kind of thing happens, we hold those for a very long time, but it's a very, very small amount.
Is that in this budget?
That's not really a
Doesn't
budget
show?
item. No, it's not, that's not part of, the tickets are always held separately. We realize revenues when the concert happens.
5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, all right.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item?
Did you say time? I can't hear.
I'm sorry, she did. She called 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. With that, take a motion on this item.
I would move approval of this item.
I'll second.
All right, moved by Ward, second by Claire. Any further discussion on item 4? All right, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Next item, item 5, WH 20-22. Resolution to approve park bench in memory of Patricia Marvin on property generally located east of the festival parking lot at the north end of the Lincoln Bridge.
Good afternoon, Chris Connolly, Chief Assistant City Attorney. We were approached about placing this bench in an area on the north side of the tracks near the pedestrian bridge. We put it on the agenda, but since that time, we've had some more internal discussions about this, and we believe that the correct course of action is to hold off for right now while a master plan is developed for placement of benches and whatever other amenities may be appropriate along the ramp on the north side in particular, but maybe even on the south side. Lynn Johnson with Parks and Recreation is willing to develop that plan, and he believes that he may be able to have it ready for the October meeting. And so what I would ask the board to do is either withdraw, or we can withdraw it for now and then bring it back at the time that we think a plan is ready to bring to the board that may include this bench at that time. But I think the goal is to come back at some point with this.
Good. Any questions for Chris?
I just have, well, go ahead, Patty or Tammy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to comment, and I will be happy to introduce the motion, and I appreciated the briefing that I had with Mr. Connolly and Finance team. And I appreciate the opportunity to withdraw this from the agenda, and by no way does this reflect this great, generous gift from the Marvin family. So I just want to say that for the record and publicly, because it is a generous and thoughtful donation that they want to make. But I too was concerned a bit when we talked about it in our briefing that we would be setting a precedence without a process. And so I appreciate the opportunity to pull it for now until Parks and Recreation has the opportunity to come up with a master plan for us to use for future donations of this nature. So with that, I would move the withdrawal of this from the agenda. And thank you for that opportunity.
Councilmember, before you move that, I think Regent Claire wanted to speak as well. Is that all right?
I was just going to say exactly the same thing, and it is not a reflection on the Marvin family. And in fact, had Dan Marvin not been involved in this project would not have gotten completed. So I hold the Marvin family in the highest regard. I like the idea of having a plan.
All right. And with that, I have a motion by Councilmember Ward. And
Oh, a second by me?
a second from Regent Claire. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, excuse me. We did not take public comment. Let's back it up even more. My apologies. Would anyone like to testify on this item that we are moving to withdraw? Seeing none, we have a motion from Councilmember Ward, seconded by Regent Claire. And if there's no further discussion, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Next item, item number 6, WH 20-23, resolution approving the proposed operating budget and capital improvement program for the West Haymarket JPA for September 1st, 2020 through August 31st, 2021.
Members of the board, thank you for the time. So you have in your packet the proposed operating budget. Before I get into the presentation, I just want to say this is probably a year that's been like no other year. And a lot of the core revenues of the JPA are primarily impacted by COVID-19, especially with the hospitality industry. So I would say we're going to be nimble and ready for changes as we move forward. And I would also say that, even though we're presenting you a budget right now, I would be prepared for potential amendments that might come before the board as we move forward throughout the year, as we know more going forward. So, first, I always like to highlight the revenue flows of the JPA. I know this is probably fairly difficult to see. Sorry. But Pinnacle Bank Arena generates about $8.3 million in revenues typically. And of that arena revenues, $3.2 million stays with the Pinnacle Bank Arena. And then another $5.1 million moves over and stays with the JPA, even though it's generated by the arena. So I just want you to know, the cash flows, everything's not clean as far as how that occurs. It's really a mixed bag of where the revenues for the arena come and go to the JPA. So then the arena has about $5.5 million of operating expenditures. That's actually a budget that's adopted by the city council within the annual budget process. Then on the JPA in total has about 29.8 revenues that we've projected for the upcoming fiscal year. The non-arena revenues are about 24.7 million. So of that, the majority are going to be the occupation taxes, the debt subsidy that comes from the IRS for the Build America bonds, DEC customers, reimbursements, and some various others. The arena revenues that are coming in are the premium seat revenues that are generated through the arena, the sponsorship revenues that come in from IMG. We've got some rent from UNL for basketball that comes over to the JPA, and then also the parking from various events that occur that's generated by the arena. So that's about 1.6 million. So of that total 29.8 million in revenues, we have operating expenditures of 29.9 million total dollars that's being proposed. Of that, the JPA transfers 1.8 million back to the Pinnacle Bank Arena to help operate. So if you look at kind of the over-under on the revenue of the arena of what it's generating, it's in total about 8.3 million with total operating expenditures about 5.5 for a net over-under of about surplus of 2.8 million, but it's divided between these different pots. So just want to give you a quick highlight before I go into the overview of the budget. So if you look at our preliminary financial status as of year end, we had about 40.6 million in fund balance that was just reported. Of that, we have a legal requirement of 24.6 million, and that's set up through the bond indentures. So we're legally required to keep that on hand. And then you have 16 million currently at year end in the surplus account. All the bond payments were made in full for the prior year, and we have substantial resources to continue those are made moving forward as well. So the revenue budget that's proposed for the JPA is 29.8 million. You can see the bulk of that, 57%, is occupation taxes. We're estimating at about 6.9 million for the upcoming year. We have interest subsidy from the IRS of about 3.6 million, DEC customer reimbursements of 1.8 million, parking about 2.5, and then I just categorize kind of the other group of that makes up about 16% or 4.8 million. You can see occupation taxes for 1920. In 1819, we collected 17.6 million. Because of the impacts of COVID, that dropped down to about 15.5 million. You can see the budget for 1920 was about 17.9 million, so we came in substantially under budget in the prior fiscal year. For moving forward in 2021, we're estimating about 16.9 million, so that's a 10% increase from the prior year. We think with we're seeing recovery in the hospitality industry. It's still down though compared to the prior year. You can see on these slides shows the progression based on the 3 occupation taxes that we collect. So car rental, you can see at its worst point, dropped down by 76% compared to what we collected the prior year. That's improving. We hope to continue to see that improve moving forward. Bar and restaurant, you can see the largest impact was a 46% drop. We're about 10% down. And then hotel at its worst was 76. That's improved to about 43% drop. So we have seen a lot of improvement in those areas, but there are still major impacts in the industry.
We've talked about the pandemic upending life as we knew it, and that chart is maybe the best illustration I've seen of things actually being completely turned on their heads. Let's hope we don't have to look at something like that next year.
Yeah, and so then we continue to monitor this, and a lot of this is going to be impacted by the health measures that come out as we move forward, and depending on where we're at with cases and numbers. So we're continuing to monitor and watch these very, very closely. Other revenue impacts that we could potentially have, we talked about premium seat rentals a little bit earlier. Parking revenues, I think there was a survey, maybe it came out earlier in the month, that said 65% of office workers haven't returned back to downtown. So we're going to continue to have impacts on parking as people aren't working downtown yet. Interest earnings, as you know, the Fed has dropped the rates to near zero. So besides what the JPA has invested in TIFs, the other earnings that we're going to earn will continually drop as we get closer. I think some of the bids that we're getting right now are, on the good side, maybe about 30 basis points. So, and then also Pinnacle Bank Arena events, as Tom can. We still continue to have events at the arena. However, they're not to the extent that they were before, which is what really helped to drive the revenues at the arena. On the expenditure side, we have $29.9 million in proposed expenditures. You can see the biggest of that is the debt service at $19.8 million. We have some capital outlay items rolling over, but that's $1.3 million. Other services and charges of $8.7 million, which makes up about 29%. And then just a small amount of materials and supplies. So the biggest, or I'll go through some of the highlights of the expenditures. So as Regent Claire mentioned, the staff expenditures, right now that's proposed to increase by 0.5% for the upcoming year. Management services, so this is the money that the JPA collects, and then we send that back to the arena. So we've still proposed an operating increment at $600,000, and then the IMG guaranteed rights for sponsorship at about $1.148 million. So I think these are things that could potentially change as we move forward in the year, depending on the cash flows at the arena. So I'm keeping in close contact with Tom and Trent at the arena to understand their cash flows, so that if there's potentially more needed, we'll come back to the board and ask. Capital improvement highlights, the majority of these are carryovers from the prior year. We have the video board control, that's $236,000, so that wasn't completed in the prior year. We've carried that over to the current. You have an item on the agenda asking for 2 volleyball floors. That's estimated at $90,000, and Tom can speak more to that. And then we have our agreements for economic development that are carrying over for the Block 4 streetscape of $475,000. the Oscar 2.0 project, we've still got encumbrances of $105,000. And then the Block 5 stormwater, that was for the development on Block 5 for the park and future potential development. So that's at $95,000. The debt expenditures are $19.8 million. You can see by the chart here, we jumped up in the current year from somewhere around 16.5 million up to that 19.8. That's going to stay flat for 2 years, and then it increases again to close to 23 million. So that's kind of where we're going from a debt perspective, as this is the first year that we're going to be making primarily principal payments on the 300 million in bonds that was outstanding. We have been making some principal payments on the 25 million that was issued for one of the parking garages. So just to summarize, like I said earlier, we ended the year with about 40.6 million, 16 million in surplus. We're meeting our legal requirement of that 24.6 million. We've got a budgeted deficit of 100,000 for the current year. We did estimate, when this was originally set up, it was set up that we would collect the taxes, those would grow over time, and then the bond payments would jump up, and then we'd start making those principal payments. So it's doing, in theory, what it was supposed to do. The struggle is that nobody could predict COVID-19 and its impacts that it's having on the JPA and Pinnacle Bank Arena. But we have sufficient funds to pay the bonds. And even the 2020 occupation taxes that we're estimating, they're still 10% over the original projections when all of this was put together. So, we're doing good from an occupation tax standpoint, but, the whole model is, in question, I guess, right now because of COVID-19. So, but I think we're in good financial standing to move forward. Yeah.
Any questions? Any questions? No? Okay, would anyone like to testify or come forward and speak on this item?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. Could I have some of those sheets that you have shown?
The slides?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll email you a copy of the slide deck.
Okay. What do you have as a balance to pay off the bonds?
I mean, the bonds are going to be paid over the next 30 plus years. I mean, I
Yeah,
think the
and-
final payout's in 2046.
Do you know what the balance is over that time?
Like what's needed to pay off the bonds?
Right.
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I mean, we've got somewhere around 324 million in principal outstanding, but
324 million?
I'll send you those figures.
Okay. And when you're going over the operating budget and the capital improvement, it looks like some of these items in the new budget have gone up. Concession equipment, interest. Is that something you can't control?
Are you talking like the interest payments on the bonds?
Yeah.
So when the bonds are sold, those payments are set for
Okay.
all future years. So they're going to fluctuate moving forward based on the bond schedules.
Okay, so, but it's gone up. Well, one of the things that financial planners, experts are saying is that people need to save money because nobody knows what's going to happen. A lot of people don't know if they're going to have jobs. I think holding this money for tickets from for a year or two down the road is not a good thing to do, and I can't imagine people aren't going to request refunds on that. Who can know if they'll be alive by that time? And if their estate would want to get that money back, it would be a big hassle. So I guess I don't see that the WJPA is being as careful with their money as financial planners would be. It's noted that savings accounts for people are increasing, and that's one good thing for people, but we would feel and do feel that there need to be some more cuts here. You've spent $700,000 for lights, and now the arena manager wants another $87,000 or $90,000 for volleyball courts, and those things aren't necessities. I'm sort of getting into another resolution here, but it just seems that as though there haven't been enough cuts being made, and why staff hasn't been laid off over there, which can save you money too. And I realize that's hard on those staff, but we have to think about the taxpayers too. And they can get unemployment.
Would anyone else like to comment on this item? All right. With that, any further questions or discussion?
Can I ask a question? Tom, we've talked about some potential other ways to increase revenues while the shows are in a holding pattern right now. And I was thinking about tailgates, for example, or watch the games at the arena. Are those things that we're looking into? And maybe you could address some of those things.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah, those are all opportunities for us as we continue to press forward and see how the football schedule, basketball schedule, all those type of things come together. There have been furloughs within the staff. There are multiple savings throughout the staff. We've done utility savings, expenditure savings, all those type of things. But yeah, the opportunities that are ahead of us as we see what this football schedule looks like, how often it'll come up, whether fans are ever allowed back into the stadium, all those type of things impact how we approach what we're going to do. And those discussions have already begun to happen with the health department so that we know when we know exactly if anyone will be in the stadium, if they're not, how we can invite people. Those discussions are already underway. So we continue to look for ways. Now, we've already been having some events. We've done graduations, we've done MMA. We have this coming weekend on October 3rd and 4th, PBR bull riding. So there are events that we're trying to do. The idea is to make sure that they're done safely, that they're done within the guidelines of the health department, and that people are safe and comfortable to come to those type of things. So we're not just dead in the water. We continue to have new things that come up all the time.
Any further questions? Tom, I just want to say thank you for what you have done to support our wider community, whether it's planning for a potential Husker volleyball relocation to the arena, to the graduation ceremonies, to supporting the ceremony memorial service for investigator Mario Herrera. You have really, you and your team, what's left of it, have stepped up to serve during this difficult time, and we're grateful.
Thank you. We've got a great staff, and they're willing and always ready to push forward. And it's an unusual time, and so it's different than what we would normally deal with. And hopefully we're doing the best we can for you, and also for the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? Okay. I want to thank you for your presentation, Brandon, as well.
Could you distribute copies of those slides too to us? I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I think it's exciting too, the fact that in spite of what's happened, given the plan that we put in place and from the very onset, we're still 10% higher than what we predicted we were going to be, which is remarkable.
Right. With that, I would entertain a motion on item 6, the proposed operating budget and capital improvement program for the West Haymarket JPA for the upcoming fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, second by Claire. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. Next item, item 7, WH 20-24, resolution approving settled claim in the amount of $41,067.13 between Canopy Park, West Haymarket Holding Company, and the West Haymarket JPA for alleged damages and liabilities with regard to a sanitary sewer line found and located on lots 1 and 2, West Haymarket 6th Edition.
Chris Connolly, City Law. When Block 4, which is Canopy Park, was being developed, we signed the redevelopment agreement with Canopy Park, and then shortly thereafter, as they started to do work on it, there was an abandoned sewer line that was discovered. Canopy Park believes that that was our duty to have found and located that and known about it. We did not have records that indicated the existence of this abandoned sewer line. But there was some documentation that maybe showed the existence at one point and then didn't show it at another point. And so it's unclear whether anyone was ever on notice of this line. Canopy Park went ahead and removed it at a cost of about $82,000. And after negotiations, we've agreed tentatively, subject to board approval, to pay for half of the removal costs, which is the $41,067.13 that you see in there. And so what we would propose is have the board approve this settlement agreement. There is a settlement agreement that we would have the mayor execute on behalf of both the JPA and the city, because they technically made a claim against both the JPA and the city. The city really doesn't have much to do with this. They were in the redevelopment agreement, but the city never owned the real estate that's subject to this. So it's really a JPA matter, if you will. And then we would have Canopy Park execute the agreement, and then we would deliver the check if you end up approving this agreement.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to testify? Would anyone like to testify on this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on item 7.
So
Second.
Moved by Claire, second by Ward. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
yes.
Motion carried, 3-0. Next item, item 8, WH 20-25, resolution approving second right of entry agreement between the West Haymarket JPA and the University of Nebraska to enter upon an abandoned railroad bridge to conduct load testing experiments through November 1st, 2020.
Chris Connolly, City Law Department. The board had previously approved an agreement allowing the engineering department from the university to do load testing on an abandoned railroad bridge. The engineering department had difficulties getting out there because of COVID-19, and throughout the summer they were not able to get out there. But they are now asking, now that we're into a new semester, they'd like to go ahead and finish and actually do those experiments. We certainly have no problem with doing that, and we initially set this up as an amendment to that agreement. Then I realized that the old agreement had expired, and so I had the agenda amended and have included a new agreement which essentially does the same thing, allows them to go out and do their load testing on the bridge. As before, there is no cost to the JPA. The university has agreed to indemnify the JPA as is appropriate. And so this is really this is the same agreement that was approved months ago, and so I would just ask the board to approve it as is.
Any questions for Chris?
So when you say indemnification from potential, this being an attractive nuisance and somebody coming on to the coming onto the
Well,
bridge,
the
or, I mean,
indemnity-
that's the thing I'm concerned about here, is I want to make sure that we're protected, that if anybody gets injured out there, that we're held harmless.
Yeah, the plan is, for now, that they would be allowed to go ahead and do their testing, and the indemnification would take care of any damage that's done as a result of the testing. That could be partial collapse of the bridge, we don't know. Once this testing is done, though, the plan is to go ahead and sort of safe the bridge and put up bollards and fencing and those kinds of things, and we've already had discussions with the board about doing that, but we haven't been able to get on there because they needed a clear path to get onto the bridge with their equipment. So as soon as they're done, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to try and get this in now, this month still, was so to give them the opportunity to get that completed so that we can then take the next steps in putting up the fencing and doing the other things to make it safe.
So do we have signs out there now? Will we put signs out?
I don't know that there's signs up at the moment. I believe there is some fencing down below, but the actual path onto the bridge is there, it's open. And it has been that way.
Question? Yeah.
Councilmember Ward?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Chris, does the November 1, 2020 expiration of this agreement mean that the College of Engineering has until November 1st this time to do that part?
Correct.
The university needs to comply by then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, I'd ask for a motion on item 8.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, second by Claire. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Next item, item number 9, WH 20-26, resolution approving an expenditure not to exceed $13,562.97 to purchase a new COM 3000 receiver for the Pinnacle Bank Arena.
Tom Lorenz, Pinnacle Bank Arena. The request here is to take an expenditure out of the CIP. There is lines within the CIP that would talk about technology items, and believe it or not, the arena is about 7 years old already. So this particular piece of equipment has gone to what's called end of life, and you see that a lot of times with technical equipment. You get to a point where it's not supported anymore and or doesn't work. This one has been failing, and we've been putting some parts in it and limping it along. The great news on this is that to replace this COM 1000 receiver with a COM 3000 receiver is we share our direct TV feed with the university. So they use that with the university athletic department through our internet protocol TV software, which we also share. They're going to pay for half of this replacement. So what would normally be a $27,000 expenditure, they're going to pick up half of that cost, and this will bring us back into a working mode, particularly for the type of things that we're talking about. To be able to come back and take advantage of the Husker games, whether there's fans or not, whether it's an away game or a local game, to gather people in, we need this thing to be working so we can pull that TV signal in and put it back up on not only the big video board, but also on the IPTVs that go throughout the building. So it is timing is not the most ideal, but it's one of those expenditures that comes up from time to time. And again, since we're paying for about half of it, it's a better deal than taking that entire hit by ourselves.
Any questions for Tom? Say thanks, Regent Claire. Getting up the other half. All right.
Whatever I can do.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on item 9.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, second by Claire. Any further discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Item carried 3-0. Next item, item 10, WH 20-27, resolution authorizing the chairperson and/or purchasing agent to enter into a contract to issue a purchase order to the lowest responsible bidder for the purchase of 2 volleyball floors for the Pinnacle Bank Arena for a sum not to exceed $87,000.
Chris Connolly, City Law. Tom and I are going to kind of tag team this a little bit here. I'm going to talk about the process, and Tom will talk about the floors themselves. This was something that came up just very recently, and we did not have an opportunity to get this to a bid in time to be able to present to you with a completed bid and a formal number that we could give you to go forward. Tom was concerned about lead time on this, getting the floors in on time, and he'll explain why. And so we've couched this in terms of authorizing the chair to sign off on a bid that would not exceed $87,000 for these floors. And so we have used this kind of a process before. We try not to do it. We try and keep it in reserve for things that are that just don't have a good time element to it as far as we're concerned. But we felt like we couldn't wait until the end of October to bring this to the board. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom to talk about the floors.
So the request for 2 sport court or 2 Terraflex floors comes from the fact that we're going to be hosting the NSAA Girls State Volleyball Tournament once again. If you think way back in time, the fact when Lincoln didn't get the volleyball tournament was one of the driving forces to continue to push forward with the arena. So we've won the bid to have the volleyball floor or have the volleyball tournament again, and that happens in November. Past several years, we've been renting a floor, and it costs anywhere. The initial cost was about $3,000. The last couple years, the cost has increased from $3,000 to $3,500 to $4,200 respectively per year. The floor that we're looking at, the 2 floors, the Terraflex floors, and I'll talk about them a bit. The cost for that, the request is for not to exceed $87,000. We have a very strong idea that this will come in at about $80,000, so it'll be more of an $80,000 expenditure. The floor is expected to last over 20 years, so your cost per year for that floor is about $4,000, and it's a cost that goes back against that particular event. So it does pencil out over time, and it's something that we'll continue to use and hopefully continue to be able to keep the girls' state volleyball tournament here. Sport court, or the Terraflex floor, is used right now by multiple different high-end university and other organizations. It is the safest floor out there. So what we want to make sure is as these high school athletes come in from across the state and end up doing not only the pre-games, but looks like this year potentially the finals with us, that they are operating on the most safe floor. University of Nebraska has this, the University of Omaha has it, University of Nebraska Omaha, University of Nebraska Kearney, Rutgers, Ohio State, Iowa, Northwestern, Kansas State, Iowa State University, Notre Dame. All of these different programs use this exact same type of floor. Again, if there was still a rental floor available with COVID, we would still try to do that, but that rental floor is just not available, and so we do need to have the 2 floors. The reason we have 2 floors is because we do 2 courts simultaneously on the first 2 days of the tournament. That allows us a little more volume within. Even with social distancing, we'll be able to do that. And again, it looks like potentially this year we'll do the 3rd day of finals. Specifics about the floor, the NSAA obviously would prefer the Terraflex floor. It's proved to be safer for all NSAA athletes. Part of the reason why Lincoln was selected to continue to host the NSAA volleyball finals were the expectation that we would have Terraflex floors to be used. We've waited. We talked about putting it in the CIP right away, but with COVID, we weren't sure whether high school sports would continue. Now that it seems that it is very highly likely that the schools will continue to have students in place, that those championships will continue, we are getting close to where we need to make sure that this is a secured floor so we can move forward and fulfill those responsibilities. What else can I tell you about the floor?
Any questions?
Are the finals held at PBA or at Devaney?
Volleyball finals traditionally are at Devaney,
So
but again, this year with COVID and the idea that they would like to try to keep a bubble around the teams and things like that. We are in discussions with not only UNL Athletics, but also NSAA about doing the entire 3 days at Pinnacle Bank Arena. And we'll see how it works into the future.
And then this type of floor will also be used for when you have the international volleyball.
Right. Yeah, we have those abilities to bring them in. This is a FIBA, which is, and it's a French name. It's that organization. But yeah, it's an international organization that uses that. We've had them in a couple of times. It's been very successful. And so it's great to have this asset there, and we will find other ways to use it. We don't know what's going to happen with University of Nebraska volleyball, and we'll see where the bubbles and windows are put together and how that works out. But there's potential that maybe at least some practice could happen over at Pinnacle Bank Arena, and then this would be used for that also.
Any other questions? I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. Did you say that a rental floor is not available, period, because
It's
of
not.
COVID?
No,
Okay.
the company that we used to rent from has, frankly, they've said that they won't rent it anymore, and they would rather we buy it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone like to testify on this item?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. You can want champagne, but when you don't have your income guaranteed, it's not appropriate to have something like this. As I said before, it's spent almost $1 million on requests since COVID came out. I note on the budget for the Pinnacle Bank Arena that SMG management fees went up. I don't think the city or the JPA is being hard enough on them to ask them to consider the financial situation at the present time. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold. And to be spending this kind of money on things that Mr. Lorenz says are necessities is not a good use of taxpayers' money. In addition, all of this is conjecture. So if things don't come through the way they are, you will have to go to the taxpayers to pick up the bill. As I remember, Don Hertz was the original finance manager at this time, and the word was that he did not think the arena was going to be self-paying. It's very precarious at this time. If you look at the budget, if you hadn't given the arena a $600,000 increment, the balance would be $32,546. So we believe that the board needs to reconsider this expense and negotiate further with SMG about hard times.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none. Did you have another question, Regent Clark?
Tom, what are we doing with the old floor?
What was that?
What are we doing with the old floor?
We don't have an old floor.
Oh, it's because you were renting
We were
it.
renting it, correct.
Okay.
And let me also, it's not just how it impacts us. When you have fans from across Nebraska coming into the rail yard, into Lincoln, they're staying at hotels, they're working at the rail yard, they're going to restaurants, they're buying gas, all those type of things. So the tax impact from those type of events is what helps not only pay for the rest of this, but it helps pay for the rest of the services in Lincoln. So while you try to look at events at Pinnacle Bank Arena in a small bubble, and actually what we do hopefully affects positively the rest of the city with an influx of potential customers and those type of things.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Okay. With that, I take a motion on item 10.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, second by Claire. Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
Motion carried 3-0. Next item, item 11, sets the next meeting date for Thursday, October 29th, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. here in council chambers.
Okay. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, second by Claire. Please call the roll.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Claire?
Yes.
We are adjourned.